I feel like we should be going, woo, and
Yeah.
holding our hands up, like, holding our hands
We
up.
could actually
Go
we
ahead.
could dub that in.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure. We'll do that.
Hey everyone, it's Elliot.
And Todd, welcome to Two Designers Walk Into a Bar, an ongoing conversation about pop culture and iconic design.
Today's episode is for the thrill seekers.
We pit roller coaster identities against each other.
And not just any roller coasters. We are each representing our home states.
Yep, so buckle up by pulling the restraint harness tightly against you and grab a couple of quick high-octane shots.
As we take a high-speed drop back into the bar.
Whee! Sound effect, sound effect, sound effect.
Insert
we have
here,
roller
insert
coasters
here.
in the bar. Yeah, roller coasters in the bar. Do you want to explain what we're talking about today?
Yeah, I gotta admit, Todd, as we get started, I almost feel like, I don't want to brag, but I almost feel like I'm coming into this fight with you having one arm tied behind your back a little bit, because I'm very confident in my home amusement park that I'm bringing to the bar today.
I can see that. And remember, we're talking about the identities of the roller coaster. And my friend, there's some jankiness going on up in Ohio. Let me just say, you're going to have to admit it.
You know what? It's because we poured all our expertise into the build quality of the roller coasters themselves.
Very, very, very likely that's the case. And what gave me this idea originally was I saw my home state's amusement park, Carowinds. I saw one of their roller coaster identities, and I went, damn, that's not bad. And so I thought, well, this would be fun because everyone's heard of Cedar Point. It is
Yes.
kind of the roller coaster capital of
Yes.
the U.S., I'd say.
Yes.
And probably some people on the East Coast may have heard of Carowinds, which was not for a while a roller coaster capital, but they've gained a little ground recently.
I think it's because of all the Ohioans moving south. I think they didn't have a choice.
I actually know the real reason.
Ooh,
and,
okay.
And it's
okay,
going to
so we're
be,
gonna get
I'll
into
get
this.
to it in a second.
I
But
love it. I love it. Okay.
Since you have the one arm tied behind your back with the advantage
No,
here. Well,
I tied your arm behind your
well,
back.
why is that? I thought because you were trying to make it even.
No, I want every advantage I can get.
Oh, okay. I mistook what you were saying. Okay.
See, if I can tie one of your arms behind your back, it'll be that much easier for me to get your wallet when the bartender comes over.
Well, that's true. That's true. That's true. But anyway, you are from the great state of Ohio.
I am.
Originally.
Yes.
I think our
Yes.
listeners are well aware of all that entails. You now make your home in North Carolina, where I am from. But
Yes.
tell us about Cedar Point.
Okay. As you mentioned, many people have probably heard of Cedar Point, at least in passing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of has this mythology. It's I would argue, I'll say this. I mean, I have no real research to back this up, but I will say it is probably the most famous, what I'll refer to as freestanding amusement park. And by that, I mean, it's not a Disney park or it's not a
Yeah.
Universal park
Not
or
a
anything.
Six Flags or anything
Well,
like that.
well, it is now, though.
Oh, it is now.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Six Flags bought them a few years ago. But for
Okay,
the
okay.
longest time, they were their own thing. They were their own freestanding thing.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are not indoctrinated into amusement park lore, Cedar Point is located in northern Ohio on beautiful Lake Erie.
Okay.
And the name comes from the peninsula that the park is on.
Okay.
Originally, this peninsula had an abundance of cedar trees, and that was 150 years ago. Isn't
When
that
they cut them all down to make
yeah, they got to
the
get
amusement
these
park.
trees out of here. We need to build some roller coasters.
How are we going to build a steel roller coaster with all these stupid ugly
They do.
trees?
You know what? In their defense, I don't know if it's made from cedar, but there are wooden roller coasters there too.
Okay, well, it makes sense.
So the lighthouse that's still there today, it's called the Cedar Point Light, has been in place since 1862. So
Wow. Okay.
people discover the bucolic setting of Lake Erie for their recreation many, many moons ago. So
Yeah.
we're talking during the Civil War here, the beginning of the Civil War.
Okay.
Cedar Point itself opened in Sandusky, Ohio in 1870, and it began as a public beach. So lighthouse comes in, some civilization starts to come onto this otherwise wooded peninsula, and then people discover the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of history we could go into, but I'm going to keep it very, very light.
Okay.
And we will have a link on our episode page to Cedar Point. People can jump in and look at all the details. But basically, a grand pavilion was opened a few years later in 1888. So
Okay.
the beach had existed since 1870. Close to 20 years later, they opened this grand pavilion. So it's this big sort of entertainment center. And the first amusement ride, which, Todd, I know this is your favorite, the water toboggan.
Except we pronounce it toboggan. Here in the
Okay.
South.
Okay.
So
Toboggan.
I barely understood what you were. I barely understood what you were talking about, but I can translate. Now.
Okay. For the people south of the Mason-Dixon who love this
Yep.
podcast. So the water toboggan opened 2 years later, and electricity arrived a year after that. So all of a sudden, man, rapid fire, Ready
Oh, wow.
Kilowatt makes his appearance at Cedar Point. And in
Yeah.
fact, it's the second oldest amusement park in the United States.
Is it really? I had no idea.
Yeah, it's very, very old. 364 acres in size.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
not young and it's not small.
Yeah.
The park has reached numerous milestones over the years. As you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, it's probably most well known for the roller coasters. So Cedar Point at one point in time was the only amusement park in the world with 5 roller coasters that exceeded 200 feet in height, as well as the only park with roller coasters in all 4 height classifications. So
Oh, okay.
are you enough of an amusement park nerd or a roller coaster? I will admit, when I was doing research for this, I knew there were roller coasters and there were different heights and kind of stuff, but I had no idea about these height classifications.
I
mean,
know
this
they
is
call
getting
them
really-
different names, but I thought
Yeah.
it was just arbitrary. I thought it was like they wanted it to sound cooler by calling it a giga coaster or whatever that is.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
You're
or
gonna
whatever.
educate us on
Yeah.
this.
Okay. So yes, let's get into the. I don't know if this is this kingdom, phylum, species. Where,
I know, yeah, right.
where are we?
Take
in
us
the
down the biology of coasters.
Yeah.
here.
Where's Darwin when you need him? Okay. So the first classification is a hypercoaster, and that's a
Okay.
coaster with a bunch of children who have just had large ices on them. No, it is
Yeah.
a coaster with a drop of 200 feet or more. Okay, so you're like
Okay.
hyper.
All right,
Yeah,
all
I
right.
get that. That goes back to what I mentioned a minute ago about the 200-foot height. Okay,
Yep.
you mentioned Giga Coaster, so I love
Yeah.
this because I was like, okay, is this like 1,000 or something?
I know. Yeah, that's what
Right?
I would think.
Yeah, no. It's a coaster. It's a hyper coaster with a drop of 300 feet or more. So in other words, it's a giga coaster. I guess that's the 100, right? So you're adding
Okay.
100 to 200 to get 300. So that's a giga coaster. And probably
Okay,
again,
all
when
right.
this was, conjured up, this was probably they thought, oh, it'll never get bigger than this.
Sounds
right?
a little arbitrary. I'm just gonna be honest with you, but
Well, what are you gonna do?
I know we're not on the roller coaster council or the roller coaster naming board, so
Could we get on that?
we could, because anyway,
We just need to call up our
digress on that.
lobbyists in Washington or Sandusky or wherever they may be.
that's right.
Okay, so then the next classification is the Stratocoaster. And Todd,
Okay.
guess how many feet that is in terms
That's
of
up in the stratosphere, so it's thousands of miles.
It's 400 feet.
Okay, well, I was close.
You were right there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then last but certainly not least, Todd, the Exacoaster. So
How big is- how
that's
tall
a
is that?
coaster? Yeah, 600 feet or more.
Damn,
Yeah,
such a thing exists?
apparently. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So yeah, and it exists at Cedar Point.
Okay.
I will freely admit I've never ridden on an Exit coaster, which is probably why I'm still alive and talking to you now.
I'm sure I would black out during that.
You black out every time I bring up our bar tab, so I'm sure you would
I
black
do, yeah,
out.
you're right. So that would be
Exit
easy.
coaster.
Whatever's below hypercoaster, consider me blacked out. Yeah.
So Cedar Point has received the Golden Ticket Award for Best Amusement Park in the World from Amusement Today for 16 consecutive years from 1997 to 2013.
Yeah.
So, not bad.
Not shabby.
No. Now, because it's on Lake Erie, because it's in northern Ohio, it's not open year-round. So so I have a little bit of a caveat here. So among seasonal amusement parks in North America, Cedar Point consistently ranks as the second most visited behind only Canada's Wonderland. So obviously, if anything's in Canada, unless it's indoors, by definition, it's going to be seasonal.
Right.
And so they get 3.44, so almost 3.5 million visitors a year. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's crazy. I haven't run the numbers per month, but I've been to Cedar Point in the summer, and it's bonkers. I mean, it's packed out.
So second to 3.44 million visitors a year.
No. Cedar Point gets 3.44.
Oh, Canada gets a few more than that.
Yeah, but it's metric system, so can you really trust those numbers? I don't know.
I think, again, if we're on the roller coaster council, we need to dig into that.
Yeah. I mean, what's the exchange looking like?
That's going to be my first motion, Elliot, when we get on the council.
You know what? I would second your motion.
You would second it? Okay,
yeah,
good,
I would.
Good.
So we need to insert a gavel sound here because the motion has just passed. So in addition, several of the buildings at Cedar Point are also listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which again makes sense given the age of the park. Okay, so this is all fine and good, right? But we're not here to talk about old stuff. We're here to talk about new stuff. We're here to talk about cool stuff, the post-electricity stuff, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in. I'm going to give you 3 logo picks. And again, folks, we're going to have all of these on our episode page so you can look at them yourselves and see if you feel that they're legit. Okay, so the first one is for the Magnum XL200. It's colloquially just known as the Magnum. Like, I remember when this came out in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, again, because it came out in the late 80s, the XL probably meant extra large, and the 200 was because it was, it's 200 feet. This is crazy, right?
Okay. That was hyper.
Yeah, so at the time, it was the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world.
Did this have anything to do with the shape of a condom or looking like a condom because it was a Magnum XL?
Let's just say it delivered quickly and with impact. We'll leave it at that.
Oh, my. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going.
That's what she said. So it was the first roller coaster to reach speeds greater than 70 miles per hour.
Okay.
And it is really the roller coaster that's credited as shifting the focus of Cedar Point to being a roller coaster park, like we just talked about. So the vice president at the time, a guy named John Hildebrandt, said, quote, "We all were smart enough to know we had something. Big Steel made a big difference, and with Magnum, we started branding ourselves as a big-time roller coaster park."
Yeah.
So this was the standard bearer. And I want to go back to something he said a second ago with Big Steel. Because if you look at the logo, what the logo reminds me of, you sort of have the Magnum that's kind of this gradated, very 80s sort of Raiders of the Lost Ark, kind of Back to the Future look to it, right? Kind of dimensional and in perspective, a little bit like fisheye perspective. But you have the track in the background swooping down through the clouds underneath the type, and then you have the track coming at you at the bottom. And I love that it's the same color as the Golden Gate Bridge. I was thinking, is this a coincidence or not? Because, of course, the Golden Gate Bridge is a bunch of steel cables, very famous for that, always being painted. And so when I look at it, even though it has nothing to do with the Golden Gate Bridge, it just reminds me of the Golden Gate Bridge a little bit.
I think, so I've never ridden this roller coaster, but it looks incredibly cool. But I have to admit, This might be one of the dumbest roller coaster logos I've ever seen. This is just, I mean, come on. They couldn't update it?
You know, Todd, you don't mess with the classics.
Well, I get it, but it does look like Indiana Jones built it, you know?
It's the mine ride from
Yeah.
the second Indiana Jones film. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's shift to the second logo.
Okay,
Maybe I'll
okay,
find
okay.
something here that's a little more to your liking, Mr.
You
Snooty.
win me over with this one.
Yeah.
Nothing against the roller coaster. I'm sure it's
Okay.
amazing.
It doesn't sound like you're packing your car up though for a weekend at Cedar Point quite yet, based on this logo. Okay.
Not based on the identity.
All right.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's shift gears to roller coaster number 2, and this is called the Raptor.
Okay.
All right. So why this logo? Why did I choose this logo? Now, this logo is basically a bird face, but it's very sketchy looking. Looks like it was drawn with markers. And again, apparently they love gradients in Sandusky because the the hand done type underneath is sort of this pea green or olive green gradated in the black, but it's dripping, you know, and it says the Raptor and all this stuff. But the green eyes, Todd, the green eyes of the bird match the green of the type. Like, this is good. I like this illustration.
I can get this. It's kind of scratchy.
Yeah. This
a
is
raptor
like
has gotten to it.
This is very much a. This looks like it was made with like art markers from the 80s or 90s. Like, it's like a really good concept sketch. But I like it a lot because you don't often see this style anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
So in 1994, Cedar Point unveiled the Raptor, and it opened again as the tallest, fastest, and longest, but you'll love this, inverted roller coaster in the world.
Okay. All right.
And even though it was called the Raptor, it was the first to feature a signature feature called the Cobra Roll. Okay. Now, you've probably had this at your favorite sushi restaurant, but this Cobra Roll is different. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what that means is it's a double inversion with the track, and it resembles the head of the cobra, the way it's shaped. It really resembles like the hood, you know, of a cobra. And so riders travel up through the first half of a vertical loop, then the second half of a corkscrew before repeating the process in reverse. So you're getting whipped around, flicked around. So this is a little bit bonkers. And then to accommodate the footprint of the new coaster, Todd, you know what? Cedar Point isn't that sentimental because they had no problem giving the old heave-ho to the mill race log flume. So that was taken out. And then there was another ride called the Calypso that they said, you've got to go somewhere else in the park. So they have their priorities straight, right? They're a roller coaster park. Boom, boom, here we go.
I mean, if you put that in front of me, like, hey, would you mind if we got rid of a mill race log flume with the Raptor?
Right.
I'd be like, hells yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude.
Exactly.
Bring on the Raptor.
Okay, so I really like the frenetic nature. For those of you, when you take a look at this, it has this magic marker like background to it. Like, it's very scratchy, scribbly, jittery, this black look to it. And I love it because I feel like these scribbles mimic the bouncing that happens up and down when you ride on a roller coaster.
Interesting. I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're right.
So it's this frenetic energy. Like, imagine, you know, if you've ever tried to draw a straight line in a car, and now imagine try a train or something. Now imagine trying to do that on a roller coaster when you're going through the Cobra Roll.
Some double inversions.
Yeah,
and
exactly,
stuff.
exactly. So
wouldn't that be funny if they actually designed it while they were on the roller coaster?
that would be great. Yeah, like you get a master calligrapher and just put him on there.
Yeah.
see what he comes up with. But it also reminds me of the poster for the ill-fated Brandon Lee movie, The Crow. Like, there's a theatrical poster that has the crow spread out, but then it has these eyes on the wings of the crow, and we'll put that on our website as well. And coincidentally, that movie came out the same year this roller coaster did. They both came out in 94.
Okay.
So that probably isn't a coincidence. Someone was looking at what someone else is doing.
All right, good. And you said you have 3, so I'm eager to hear what your third one is.
Okay. So, Todd, you might think I'm describing a delicious Cajun dish, and maybe I am.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure. But have you ever heard of the rougarou?
No, but it does sound delicious.
It does. It does. But we'll talk about the Rougarou in just a second. So that is our third roller coaster that I am going to be talking about. Okay, but you'll love this. So originally when they were building this thing, they wanted to name it the Banshee. And you're like, okay, a wailing banshee, screaming banshee.
Wailing,
yeah, you think of, Ireland or whatever. Okay, but you'll love this. The name was scrapped because a banshee is a mythical wailing ghost that warns of impending family death. Like that's the definition.
Probably not good, huh?
Well, good news. Not to toss a good idea to the side. It actually stayed in the state of Ohio. Kings Island, which is right outside of Cincinnati, scooped it up and used it for their roller coaster in 2014.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so I would say if you're driving to Kings Island, if you're that close to Cedar Point, just keep driving. You're like, why tempt fate with the Banshee, right?
Okay, yeah.
So it ended up being called the Mantis. But the Mantis hung around for a while, and apparently it was like a super rough ride. So I don't know how many watches, wallets, fillings, eyeglasses were collected.
Fake legs.
Yeah, exactly. Were collected under this nunchucks, throwing stars, brass knuckles, switchblades. Were left under the Mantis. But apparently they got enough complaints they had to switch it over. So they turned it into a floorless roller coaster.
Okay.
And so what's meant by that is you're basically sitting on a bench and you have, the safety restraints that come over your shoulders or around your torso or whatever.
Right.
But your legs dangle freely over the track as you ride it. So I'm guessing not a lot of NBA athletes are on this thing because it seems like it would cause a lot of harm. But what is a Rougarou? We still haven't answered that question. We know it might be a delicious dish, but no. In fact, the legend of the Rougarou, Todd, has been part of Cajun folklore for centuries. Okay. So allegedly it's French-Canadian, but it was brought to Louisiana by the French settlers when they migrated down south in the 18th century. So, see, just like how I migrated down south, I'm simply following the path of the French Canadians.
So did the Rougarous.
The name Rougarou is derived from the French words loup-garou. And that means...
I've heard that.
Yeah, that means werewolf.
Werewolf.
So if you look at this logo, it's almost like Monster Energy. It kind of is what it reminds me of. It's this scratchy, these scratchy all caps letters called, that say Rougarou. And then there's eyeballs in the middle of it. And then there's sort of the Monster Energy scratch mark behind it. So it's very werewolf-like, very monster-like.
Yeah.
I think this one's fun.
Yeah.
I think this is much more in line with the Raptor, right? I think the first one was a little meh, but I think Cedar Point stepped their game up.
I think so.
And according to legend, the Rougarou is a human who has been cursed.
Oh.
Transforming into a terrifying creature with the body of a man and the head of a wolf or dog.
Okay.
All right?
I got it.
So the transformation is said to occur when a person breaks a Lenten vow. So here we go. We got a nice religious aspect to this. But it leads to a curse that can only be lifted after 101 days. So how about that? I mean, I guess my takeaway from that is riding this roller coaster is a real bitch.
Man, that does sound rough, doesn't it?
It does.
A curse for 101 days. Talk about hair of the dog, huh?
Speaking of hair of the dog.
Well, you need a hangover relief, man?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but hold on to that thought. I've actually just put 2 more shots in your tab, and the bartender called him the werewolf.
That was too clever to not accept. Well, good one. All right. I tell you what, we'll see what these werewolves are all about while we take a quick break, and we'll be back shortly. Oh. oh. Hi, We want to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this episode, we have an archive of topics ranging from the Olympics to movie posters,
Think Ghostbusters,
iconic images,
think Bigfoot,
punk music,
the Ramones,
Saturday morning cartoons,
the Pink Panther,
and failed products like OK Soda. Visit our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com for full episode notes and visuals, the latest blog content, and to sign up for our newsletter.
Follow us on social media. We can be found on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Find the links on our website or search using the phrase Two Designers Walk Into a Bar.
Most importantly, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more people like you find podcasts like this.
And tell a friend about us. Send them a link to our podcast from your listening platform of choice.
And if you're inclined, buy our merchandise. Stickers, coasters, magnets, t-shirts. We're designers. We make good stuff, and it helps support the show.
Get in touch. Use the contact form on our website or send an email to hello@twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
We read every message we get. Honest.
And we're available for speaking gigs. Email us to learn more.
Okay, now, back to the bar.
Okay, Todd, so thanks so much for buying that last round of shots.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there might be a full moon outside tonight.
Yeah. Oh, no. Sounds like you might get cursed, my friend.
Well, speaking of curses, I don't want to bag on your... I just feel like with Cedar Point, I want to know how do you fight this? How do you fight the curse of the best amusement park in the country? That's what I want to know.
Well, you're right. And, I'll give you that. There's a lot of roller coaster riding to be had at Cedar Point, but remember, we're talking about the theming and the identity.
Okay.
So I think my home park of Carowinds might stand a chance here.
Okay.
And it is your home park as well, but I get where the allegiance lies. But let me tell you a little bit about Carowinds because I think it predates you by a little bit, but it certainly is not Cedar Point historic places. It was opened March 31st, 1973.
I'm older by like 2 weeks. They said Elliot was born. We got to open this damn park up because sooner or later he's going to show up. How are we going to
celebrate
exactly.
this? Yeah. It's just south of Charlotte, North Carolina. As a matter of fact, the park straddles the North Carolina and South Carolina state lines. And it's 407 acres. So, roughly about the same as Cedar Point, right?
Bigger.
Maybe a tad bit bigger.
Yeah.
And it's also currently owned and operated by Six Flags Entertainment, too. So they're snatching up...
so they're actually brethren, right? They're actually cousins or, I don't know. Yeah. They're related somehow.
Yes. And I learned a little bit of history about that, too, which kind of starts giving us some answers to some of these roller coaster questions. But they came up with the name in 1973, obviously Caro Park, because it straddles the North and South Carolina state lines. And they said winds to mimic the winds that blow across the Carolinas. I'm like, what?
Because the Wright brothers, when they flew their plane, it was from North Carolina into South Carolina.
Hundreds of miles away from here.
So it totally
I'm
makes
just
sense.
kind of like, that sounds like, a little bit of a like early 70s groovy filter they put on that, if you ask me.
I like that. The answer, my friend, where was it blowing?
Yeah, across the Carolinas. And Bob Dylan was like, that doesn't rhyme.
Let's change that.
But let me talk about a couple of the roller coasters, which are decent roller coasters, but, have some interesting logos. The first one I'm going to talk about is one called Copperhead Strike. It's a double launch roller coaster that debuted, again, March 23rd in 2019, so it's not very old. And it was ranked in Amusement Today's Golden Ticket Awards that you referenced earlier as the third place of Best New Roller Coaster. So I guess it was the third Best New Roller Coaster of 2019, which ain't too shabby.
No. And I assume this is, we should probably confirm this, but I assume this is global.
I don't know.
You think it's U.S.?
That might just be U.S. Yeah.
Well,
I don't know. We can confirm.
Yeah, because when I was doing research on this, I'm not to sidetrack you, but I guess I'm sidetracking you. A lot of these roller coasters are not made by American companies.
No, they're not.
They're made by the Swiss and the Germans and the Italians.
But I think they rank it because they're in the U.S.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, let me tell you about the theming. It's in an area of the park called Blue Ridge Junction. And what this does is it places the visitors at Old Granny Bird's farmhouse. Now,
Okay.
just like home.
Yeah. Is this a character? Is Old Granny Bird like a...
I gathered because she shows up. But let me give you a little a sentence of her backstory here.
Okay.
Granny has been making her, I'm doing air quotes here for the listeners, prize-winning jelly. Wink, wink, for years. And there are warning signs that she has up all over the place telling visitors to leave and to also look out for snakes. I know, which I think is pretty, that's being neighborly, just to tell you to look out for snakes.
Okay.
So guests walk through the pathways to get to the entrance, and it's littered with old cars and like bird family shipping crates where she sends out her wink, wink jelly.
I love this so much. This is great.
I know. It's like, wow, North Carolina's never going to break out of the stereotype, is it?
This is amazing. This is great. Okay, keep going.
So as the ride begins, riders come up on Granny's secret still. What? There's a still?
Granny's secret meth lab.
Yeah. That would be today. And the ride begins so you can get away from Granny, who is chasing you.
Oh, I love this.
So you have to get on a roller coaster, that goes double digits in speed to get away from Granny.
Man, yeah, she's like an NFL linebacker. It's like she can move apparently. Okay.
I know, and evidently she has like a Hemi that she's chasing you with. But let me talk about the logo for a second. It obviously uses a snake image. It uses a snake's head and the body of a snake, which is kind of coiled. That might be what a cobra roll is. And it's made of copper pipe, which I think is kind of clever.
I think this is a great logo. I like this logo a lot.
I think it's very clever because, copper head, obviously, and then copper pipe for the Granny's secret still. I think that's pretty clever. And the text is kind of like that Indiana Jones swoopy text, old school kind of things you might find on an old barrel or an old crate. And it is also has rivets, like it's made out of pipes as well. So, all in all, not bad, right?
I feel like they should have used copper plate.
I really would have expected that, but I think that might just be a design nerd joke.
Yeah.
That we probably were asking too much of them for that. But
that'd be a good inside joke for that 1,000th person who got on the roller coaster.
Right. All right, let me tell you about one more real quick. Afterburn, that's an oldie. That opened way back in March 20th, 1999. They have a thing about March launches,
apparently,
by the way.
yeah.
You must have something to do with it.
It's the best month of the year.
Evidently, according to Launch Your Roller Coaster Monthly, which is not a real publication, I don't think. But
well, it only comes out every March. It's more of an annual.
That's right.
It's time again.
Yeah. It's monthly, but it's only the month of March. Okay, so Afterburn, it was originally themed as Top Gun, the jet coaster, and this is when Carowinds was owned by Paramount.
Yeah, that makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah, because that was a Paramount movie, right? And so they had to change it to Afterburn when the park was sold. Here's the little inside scoop, Elliot. Guess who it was sold to? Cedar Fair Entertainment.
Yes, Cedar Point's former parent. Yep, exactly.
That's right. So then you'll start to notice in 2006 is when Cedar Fair bought it. Roller coasters after that started getting all giggy with it.
Bet.
So So there you go. Anyway, let me just tell you about this roller coaster. Obviously, it was meant to mimic a jet thing, so it has a total of 6 inversions, including a 0G roll. And it reaches a top speed of 62, so I dare Granny to catch us on this one.
It's probably her jam that powers the plane.
Yeah, that does make a lot more sense. That would have been a really clever tie-in. But the logo, it's nothing to write home about, but it's big, bold, Top Gun-ish like letters, right? They're stacked. It's a front view of a jet fighter looking right at us, which separates the two words after and burn. And this kind of arrangement, it kind of looks like crosshairs as well. So, real military, bold. It looks like you're gonna get your fly on when you're running through this thing.
Yeah. This is very testosterone driven, testosterone forward. But there are two things that I love about it, and again, we'll throw this up on our episode page.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, of course, as a fireball behind it. It's
right.
Totally hitting the afterburners on your jet. But I also love how. So if you remember the movie Top Gun. Do you remember all the scenes where there would be like the jet wash and everything when people were on the aircraft carrier and everything was sort of blurry and rippling?
Yeah.
I love that they did that with the letters. Like it makes it feel like the plane is like blowing right at you and it just flew past these letters in the background.
Wow. Yeah. I thought that was just they didn't have high resolution back in 1999, so
maybe that was a lucky break on their part.
Maybe it was. All right. The next one I'm going to talk about is one called Thunder Striker.
Okay.
And a little bit about this roller coaster is it's kind of a big deal. You're going to drop 232 feet at a 74-degree angle.
Good Lord.
And then you're going to have 6 more drops. So all while reaching a top speed of 80 miles an hour. So I think that's a giga coaster, right? Is it 200 plus? Was that, or was that hyper?
That was just the megas too. Well, I don't know. All I know is I'm probably not going to eat a full pizza before I go.
No, you're probably not. With 7 drops in that one.
No, I might eat a couple corn dogs though. I'm willing to roll the dice there.
So originally, Thunder Striker was named after NASCAR driver legend Dale Earnhardt.
Sure.
And it was known as the Intimidator forever.
Makes sense.
Now, interestingly enough, relatively recently, in sort of our scheme of talking about things, back in December of 23, Cedar Fair renamed the coaster Thunder Striker because the licensing agreement with the Earnhardt estate had expired. So this is the very first season that it was not Intimidator.
Okay.
And if you caught that note, Cedar Fair did it. So they've sold Carowinds within the past 6 months or so, roughly, to Six Flags. Anyway, it's in the Thunder Road section of the park. Those of you who are not familiar with North Carolina, we're known for a couple things. Smoking, tobacco, and stock car racing, among some others. And science and technology, blah, blah, blah.
The first two were the big ones.
So this is in the Thunder Road section of the park, and this area celebrates that stock car racing heritage, and it continues the story of our bird family. Remember them from Copperhead Strike?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, okay.
And, so this is following Granny's grandson, Billy Bob Bird, which again, I'm like, thanks guys. North Carolina really does need this PR help we got going on here. As Billy Bob inherits his grandfather's old bootlegging Camaro. So
excellent.
We ain't nothing here except about drinking and racing.
That's right. I love it. This is great.
So let me tell you a little bit about the logo. It's kind of meh, if you ask me. It almost is like they woke up in December and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to change the name of this. Somebody put us up a logo this afternoon. It's a car, like kind of the Dukes of Hazzard jumping, that sort of perspective, says Thunder Striker underneath it. all held in, like, maybe a car logo from the 60s looking.
I think it's a name badge, like a patch that would go on a mechanic
yeah,
shirt.
I could see that.
Yeah, that's what I see it
I
as.
could see that. The number on the car is 73, obviously to mimic the year the park opened. There's nothing wrong with it. It just, if you look at things like Raptor and Guru and, Afterburner, it has a decidedly more tame
Yeah, it doesn't
appearance
quite
than
have the
those.
energy. I think the car is too small, among other things.
Yeah, and it needs flames like the Afterburner.
Yeah,
coming
I
out.
do like how the Lightning and Striker is kind of, it's a nod to Thunder, and like I think it's got some good ideas. I think the bones are there. I think it just needs to be worked on more.
Yeah, maybe that's what they're doing now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. They've had a whole year since last December. They should be.
Yeah,
Maybe that'll.
yeah.
Well, March is right around the corner, Todd. So maybe they'll when
I know
spring
they'll be
rolls
like,
around, they'll be like,
we're
"Hold
going to
on!"
rename it something.
Yeah,
different."
exactly. Yeah, I'm a fan of the 73, by the way, for obvious reasons.
Of course. All right, I'm going to wrap up the Carowinds roller coasters by talking about one that is their most popular, their most renowned, one of the most awarded in the U.S., and it also happens to have what I think is the most badass logo. It's called Fury 325.
Oh, I think the bartender has a bottle of that.
Oh, God, keep it away from you. That's not going to be good for anybody. But this roller coaster, it's at 325 feet. That's where that number comes from. It is one of the tallest and fastest roller coasters around anywhere. And it is said, legend has it, if you ride in the front row, your eyes are going to be watering from just sheer speed. Because it is, and this is, okay, now we've already established, I sort of genuflect to Cedar Point for the sheer amount of awesome roller coasters.
Yeah.
But I think this one, it was built by the Cedar Entertainment Group, so they were not playing around when they did this one. It's billed as the longest, the fastest, and the tallest giga coaster in North America.
Damn. Okay.
I know, yeah. So it features a jaw-dropping 190-foot tall barrel turn and a high-speed S-curve. Whoosh. Sorry, I was
That's
slurring
the sound
there.
of it going by.
Whoosh. That's me going down for sheer speed. That anyway pushes the speeds up to 95 miles per hour. So pretty fast. But here's the thing: the track is also 1.25 miles long. So
Wow,
it's
okay.
like a long roller coaster.
Yeah.
The average ride time is like over 3 minutes, like 3.25 minutes. So most of them never get anywhere close to that. So
That's crazy.
it's kind of a big old deal.
You better love that roller coaster because you ain't.
Yeah,
getting
you're
off
getting ready to
anytime
commit
soon.
to it.
Yeah.
Yes. And they did something really cool is this roller coaster actually does straddle the state lines.
Cool.
So they say it's too big to be contained within one state. And
I chalk that up to poor planning rather than the size.
well,
of
I
the
think,
coaster.
hey, you know what? Work with what you got, right?
I guess that's true.
It is the 5th tallest roller coaster in the world, and it consistently ranks in the top 10 roller coasters in the U.S., which is, again, I'm going to give credit to our friends at Cedar Entertainment for that.
Oh, yeah. They poured some juice on this. Yeah.
They did. They put a lot of sauce on that one. But let me talk about the logo, because I think this is pretty cool. And again, it's posted. So if you're listening while you're looking at our website, it's right down there. Just right down there.
And if you're listening to this while you're riding on Fury 325, you've got our respect because you've got some stones.
You do, yeah. And you're probably not in the mood to hear more than the 3 minutes and 1/4 seconds that we have to say about it.
And we also hope your drink has a lid on it.
Yeah. Yes, we do. The people behind you do too. So the logo is a wasp body, kind of futuristic looking. The stinger of the wasp forms the leg of the R of Fury. So it kind of just bends right in there. It has this metallic look. The roller coaster is a steel roller coaster, so there's a good reason for that. And their whole theming is it is obviously themed around a hornet chasing its target, and riders mimicking the hornet chase their target at high speeds. And the inspiration came from the American Revolution, when Charlotte, the area closest, the biggest metropolitan area closest to this park, was known as a hornet's nest of rebellion.
Yeah, the British called it that, right?
Yeah, so that's where the NBA team, the Charlotte Hornets, obviously get their name from. And, it just works. Fury was also an American car brand at one time, so I think that it has some of that.
Oh, yeah, I
going
could see
on
that. Yeah,
as well.
Plymouth, right?
Yeah. It looks like, kind of a cool muscle car thing. But I mentioned the Charlotte Hornets, although the color of this, it's sort of black and steel looking and sort of greenish teal color that mimics the same color as the NBA Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets logo. But Carowinds has never said if they had any influence over this logo or the final color scheme. But the team's original name had been restored from the Charlotte Bobcats back for 2 seasons, or 1 season, I think it is real technically, of 2014-15. So that was a wise decision, don't you think?
Yes,
definitely. To go back with this Hornet look. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I think this is an awesome look. It almost feels like, I don't know, like it's mechanical or robotic, like it's a robotic insect, almost like it's alien or something. So it's like it's so fast, it's not of this world, Todd.
Yeah, it's like a robotic hornet that, and it's not. There's not a lot of extraneous stuff. It's a really tight package there. Anyway.
Yeah. So whoever did this did a really good job. I really like this logo.
Absolutely. If you did this and you're out there listening, please give us a buzz.
Oh yeah, I would love
that.
to talk to the people who made all of these logos.
Oh yeah, true.
Although the Magnum designer probably died from old age.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that logo and that too. But it got me thinking, like as you were talking, I was thinking about some commonalities and maybe some differences.
Okay.
So see what you think here. So kind of the obvious commonalities of some things that you were bringing up about Cedar Point is they use more natural elements. A lot of animals, right?
True.
Werewolves and raptors and, scratchiness, things like that. Very natural. And I guess that's indicative of the forest area.
Yeah, even, the Magnum has the clouds in it. It's piercing the clouds, right? Yeah.
And Carowinds they have a little bit more mechanical feel. Copper pipes, this metallic look. And that obviously has to come from a heritage of stock car racing and, stills, which that one area is themed for. So it's a little bit more metallic.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because it's not like the area of Sandusky, Ohio is not. They certainly would understand mechanics and cars.
Yeah. Ohio's a pretty industrial state. Yeah.
So but it's just interesting to me. Now, are there any things that you noticed about those between either the similarities or the differences?
I would say in terms of similarities, the big one for me is gradients.
Yeah, going
These
crazy
guys
with the gradients.
have never met a gradient they didn't like. I'm going back and I'm looking at all of these logos. And every one of them, I would say, maybe the most subtle might be Afterburn, but every one of these has some sort of gradient in it. So they were all about it. So thank goodness for digital design. Otherwise, some people with some airbrushes would have been mucho busy if this had been 30 or 40 years ago throwing these logos together. So I would say that's the biggest thing. But yeah, I would agree with you that the Carowinds, I think Cedar Point was just so old and rambling and whatever that there really is no geographic identity in the way you've targeted it with Carowinds. Like I think Carowinds is very much of the place, right? And I think it was because it was much more purposeful, right? To your point, it was dropped on the state line. It was dropped in a place where there really wasn't an amusement park around. So it was very purposefully put there and very purposefully designed, where Cedar Point sort of just grew organically.
Right,
And so I
right.
think there's less of perhaps a master plan. Like I would say, outside of just create something for entertainment purposes, the master plan happened starting in the late 80s or early 90s when the VP I mentioned, it dawned on him like, oh, wow, these roller coasters are what people are showing up for. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? So I think Carowinds is much, much tighter.
Well, yeah, and I think that Carowinds didn't have the burden, and I say that as a compliment, of heritage like
Yes.
Cedar Point did, because Carowinds, and I don't think this is news to anybody, Carowinds has struggled over their 50 plus years existence by virtue of, being traded with different owners. And I think they struggled for an identity until, really just within the past decade or so. So I don't think that they were burdened by that heritage that came with Cedar Point.
So, Todd, I think you've convinced me. I think Carowinds, logo wise, is the winner.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good. So, and you want to pick a favorite? Because, I mean, I'd say my favorite is Fury 325.
I think my favorite might be, I really like Fury 325 because that's like very upscale and sleek and
Yeah.
streamlined.
Yeah.
But I love the novelty of Copperhead Strike.
Oh, yeah.
I think that might be I just, the story behind it and everything. Because I imagine Granny Bird, I just imagine Granny from the old Tweety and Sylvester cartoons. That's who's in my head.
Chasing after
with
you as you
with a
go
broom.
65
Yeah, as I
miles an
zoom by.
hour.
Get
Yeah.
this roller coaster out of my yard. Oh, man. Todd, I would say in terms of Fury, I'm not
Yeah.
mad that Carowinds won out. I think you earned it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so there's another Fury I'd like to see.
What's that?
Well, a fury of activity around these empty glasses. So quick, get out your
Oh,
wallet,
God.
wave your credit
Oh,
card, get the
God.
bartender's attention.
Oh, here we are. Here we go. Well, I should have expected that, I guess. And, and at least you're not like Granny Bird. You're not hightailing it after me with a broom. So I do appreciate that part of it. But all right. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.
Bartender, 2 Copperhead strikes.